Hi everyone, and welcome to Horror Spectator. If you're new here, consider subscribing. We dive deep into the darkest, most chilling real-life horror stories out there. And if you're a returning viewer, I'm so glad to have you back, friend. In today's video, we're diving into two stories about people traveling through some of the most remote parts of West Virginia, who ended up crossing paths with hitchhikers. The moment I got these stories, I knew I had to put them together in one video. I'm not exactly sure why, but something about them just feels connected. I'm really curious to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments if you picked up on the same feeling. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Our little community keeps growing, and trust me, that support helps more than you know when it comes to creating better and better videos for you. And remember, viewer discretion is advised. I've lived in West Virginia all my life. It's a small town tucked into the Appalachian Hills, the kind of place most people just drive through without ever stopping. At the time of this story, about 15 years ago, I was at one of my lowest points. I was working a dead-end job at a warehouse down near the old strip mine. Long hours, little pay, and nothing that made me feel like I mattered. It wore me down a little more every day. That night in particular, I remember exactly how hollow I felt. Like I was running on fumes, just a body moving through the motions, clocking in and clocking out, like some kind of broken machine. I wasn't living, I was just enduring. Even now, all these years later, I still think about what happened that night. I was driving home after my night shift at the warehouse. It was a little past 3 in the morning, and the roads were empty like they always are. That stretch of highway between the old mining facility off Route 52 and my neighborhood near the edge of Gilbert doesn't see much traffic, especially not midweek. I was exhausted, running on black coffee and muscle memory, zoning out to the hum of my tires and the low drone of the heater. Somewhere between mile marker 71 and the old marathon station just before the Buffalo Mountain turnoff, I saw someone on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a deer. But as I got closer, I realized it was a guy standing just off the shoulder, hoodie pulled up, hands stuffed into his pockets, face angled down like he didn't want to be seen. Normally, I don't stop for anyone, especially not in the middle of the night and especially not in this part of the country. But that night, I don't know. He looked young, skinny, like he didn't have much left in him. I passed him, but something made me slow down. I checked my mirrors, and against my better judgment, I pulled off just ahead of him and waited. He got in without hesitation. Didn't say much, just gave a name, and asked to be dropped off somewhere south. Nothing specific. His voice was flat, and he barely looked at me. He sat stiff, like he didn't want to take up space, holding a beat-up backpack close to his chest. At first, I figured he was just down on his luck. Maybe a kid trying to get out of town. Or more likely, some dumbass who watched a YouTube video about hiking the Appalachians and thought he'd give it a shot. Middle of the night, scared out of his mind, already regretting every decision that brought him there. Happens more often than people think. There's this whole idea going around, especially with kids, that spending a night alone in the mountains is some kind of rite of passage, like it'll make you tougher or prove something. But the truth is, there's shit out here. Real shit. And most of those kids either bail before sunrise or come stumbling out of the woods looking like they saw the devil himself. I still tried to make some small talk, see how old he was. Sometimes they look young, but when you get a better look, they're full-grown adults who just haven't had an easy life. But he kept quiet. Short answers. Nothing more than a few words at a time. Just stared out the window like he was waiting for something to happen. But as the minutes passed, I started noticing little things. His boots were caked with dried mud, but not the kind you get from walking trails. More like he'd been standing in wet fields or near a creek bed. His jeans were stained. Not just dirt, something darker, scattered in odd patterns near the knees and along the thighs. His hoodie had smudges around the pocket area that didn't quite look like grease. I tried not to jump to conclusions. People get dirty. People sleep rough. But there was something else. An odor. It was faint and metallic. Almost like rust. Not strong enough to choke you, but it was there, under the surface. He didn't ask about me. Didn't care where I was headed or what I did. He didn't even seem curious about the route I was taking. Just stared out the window, barely blinking, both hands wrapped tight around that bag. About 20 minutes into the drive, we came up on a roadblock. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing, and a couple officers checking IDs. I thought the whole thing was weird as hell. You don't really see cops out here unless something genuinely bad has gone down. I slowed down, rolled down the window. One of them shined a flashlight into the cab, asked a few basic questions. Where I was coming from, where I was going. He looked at the guy in the passenger seat for a moment too long. My passenger tensed up, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. He kept his head down, barely made eye contact. When the officer asked for his name, he gave a different one than the one he'd told me. I caught it immediately, and my stomach dropped. To this day, I still can't remember the name he gave me at first. It's like it vanished completely from my memory. But I know for a fact it wasn't the same one he gave the cops. The officer hesitated. I could tell he was sizing things up. At that point, another cop started walking toward the car. From the uniform, I could tell he held a higher rank than the one talking to us. I asked what was going on, trying to keep my tone casual. And the officer said, bodies had been found. I can't even explain what I felt in that moment. It was like panic, but frozen, like my brain couldn't decide whether to run or shut down completely. I had no reason to think the kid was involved. Yeah, he looked rough, covered in mud and something reddish, but he didn't feel like a killer. He just seemed lost. Scared, maybe. Not dangerous. As soon as those words left the cop's mouth, the other one called him over and pulled him aside. He didn't scold him in front of us, but I could tell right away he wasn't supposed to share that info. A moment later, the second cop waved us off, signaling that we could go. The second we were clear of the lights, the atmosphere in the car shifted. My hands were shaking slightly on the wheel. He didn't say anything, but I could feel his eyes on me now, like he knew I'd noticed. I kept my mouth shut, but my heart was thudding so loud I was sure he could hear it. I tried to stay calm. Thought about turning off into one of the small towns we were approaching. Somewhere with lights. People. But I didn't want to let on that I was suspicious. I just kept following the road, playing it cool, trying to act like I hadn't picked up on anything. Not even 10 minutes after we'd passed the cops, he got a message on his phone and completely flipped out. Raised his voice, loud, sharp, sudden, scared the hell out of me. He demanded to get out of the car. I told him we were in the middle of nowhere, that there was a gas station just a few minutes ahead, but he wasn't having it. Kept insisting, more and more aggressive, until I had no choice but to pull over and let him out. Truth is, I wanted him gone. That outburst only confirmed what I'd already started to suspect. After he slammed the door and walked off into the dark, I drove straight to the gas station and called the police. Told them I had just dropped off a kid about 3 minutes up the road. I said something felt off about him, that I was genuinely concerned. On the other end, they asked if he had a beard and light hair. I told them yes. They thanked me and said someone would follow up later. I think that's when the scariest part of the story really started. The cop had said bodies had been found. So I searched. Every newspaper I could find, every local bulletin. I even asked around. People who lived nearby, folks who worked along that stretch of road. Nothing. No one had heard a thing. When I didn't get a call back from the police, I drove to the station myself and demanded answers. All they told me was that they didn't know what I was talking about. They made me feel like I was losing it, like I'd imagined the whole thing or dreamed it. And honestly, if it weren't for the dirt he left on the passenger seat, I might have believed I had hallucinated the whole thing. All these years later, there was never any follow-up. No news story. No forum thread. Nothing. Just silence. Like it never happened. What I'm about to tell you happened about a year ago, during one of my many road trips. Those solitary journeys where I drive for long stretches without a fixed destination, just aiming to soak in the scenery, explore small trails, and feel the freedom of being alone in the world. I've always loved that sense of adventure, but the truth is, my car, old and without air conditioning, forced me to do most of the driving at night. Especially now that spring was pushing temperatures up to uncomfortable levels for anyone crossing deep into the heartland. That particular night, I started driving around 10:30 p.m., fully aware that I wouldn't reach my planned destination until close to 5 in the morning. I was passing through West Virginia, specifically one of its most remote stretches in the Appalachians. A region that, to be completely honest, had never really won me over, though its winding roads and dense forests held a raw, authentic beauty. I'd carried bad memories of that place for years. After a hike gone wrong left me with a lingering sense of unease every time I passed through. Still, the shortcut was worth it, and I moved forward without much hesitation. The road, as you'd expect at that hour and in such a remote area, was swallowed in total darkness. Except for a few rare moments when I reached higher ground and could spot the scattered lights of isolated homes on distant hills. The solitude was absolute. The silence was so complete that at times, it felt like even my car was an intruder in that unchanging, frozen landscape. It was during one of these stretches that something, hidden among the thick trees lining the road, caught my attention. A strong, intense light, like the beam of a flashlight, cut through the darkness for just a few seconds. Between my speed and the suddenness of the moment, I couldn't make out exactly what it was, and I didn't even consider slowing down to check it out. Whatever it was, I much preferred it stayed far away from me. I kept driving for several miles until, all of a sudden, I was hit with an urgent need to pee. Something that, due to a health condition I developed a few years back, comes on suddenly and uncontrollably, even though I'm still relatively young. I didn't have much choice. I had to pull over right there, on the side of the road, surrounded on all sides by dense forest, while the darkness around my car felt almost solid. I parked, opened the door, and had barely started to relieve myself when, out of nowhere, a man came screaming out of the shadows like some flesh and blood ghost, pointing a long rifle straight at my chest. Without giving me a second to react, he demanded that I let him into the car, yelling that I had two options: either give him a ride, or he'd take the car by force. In a moment of pure terror, I briefly considered trying to reach the small pistol I kept in the glove box, but realized I didn't stand a chance. He was already way too close. I motioned for him to get in, trying to stay as calm as I could while mentally begging him not to hurt me. For the longest 10 minutes of my life, the man kept the rifle trained on me while I, forced to keep my cool, kept repeating calm phrases, telling him I wasn't going to try anything, that he could lower the gun, that I'd take him wherever he wanted without any trouble. But he didn't waver. His gaze, wild and bloodshot, looked more like a cornered animal's than a human being's. He kept glancing nervously at the mirrors, his body coiled tight like a spring ready to snap. When I asked him in a low voice where he wanted to go, he just said to keep driving. So I did, following that narrow, winding road through the mountains, not seeing another soul, feeling every second pressed down on my chest like time itself was dragging on purpose. I couldn't say how long we drove, until suddenly, my headlights lit up a scene that froze my blood. A man lying in the middle of the road, apparently unconscious or injured, and, tucked back in the forest, almost hidden by the thick vegetation, I spotted the disguised outline of a car. The man next to me went rigid instantly, muttering in a hoarse voice for me not to stop, and he didn't even need to say it. I had already realized it was an obvious trap. I tried to swerve enough to avoid running over the body, keeping the car close to the edge of the road, but as if they knew we'd have to slow down, two men burst out from the trees, running straight at us, one of them opening fire in our direction. I slammed the gas pedal to the floor with everything I had, and tore out of there as fast as the old engine would let me. The man beside me, almost hyperventilating, said those men were after him, that if they caught him, he was a dead man. And at that moment, with brutal clarity, I realized that if they caught both of us, there wouldn't be any survivors. I impulsively suggested calling the police, but his reaction was immediate and threatening. He raised the rifle again and warned me he didn't want the cops involved. That's when, far off in the distance, I spotted a pair of strong headlights coming toward us. They were still a ways off, but from my elevated position on the road, I could see they were closing in fast. In a split-second decision, knowing that staying on the main road would be suicide, I killed the headlights and, in a reckless, or maybe lucky move, veered off onto a narrow, muddy trail winding deep into the woods. The old car, battered and worn out, groaned under the strain. But I didn't hesitate. I shut off the engine and we sat there, swallowed by darkness and silence, hearing nothing but the deafening pounding of our hearts. 3 minutes passed, 3 minutes that felt like hours, before the pursuing car roared past at full speed, never suspecting we were hidden among the trees. From the strength of its lights and the sound of its engine, I realized it was a powerful vehicle. I knew right then that I had made the right call. We stayed hidden a few minutes longer before creeping back onto the road, heading in the opposite direction from where the other car had gone. I didn't turn the headlights back on, driving only by the faint light of the moon and my memory of the road's layout, desperately trying to stay hidden from whoever was out there looking for us that night. For almost an hour, the man sat silently beside me until finally, he rested the rifle on his lap and with a hoarse whisper, thanked me, saying I could drop him off at the next small town. When we got there, he jumped out of the car and disappeared down the deserted streets without looking back. I didn't stop until I found a small roadside motel, where I locked myself in a room and passed out from exhaustion. It wasn't until the next day that I contacted the police. They were extremely cooperative and took the case seriously, questioning me extensively and doing a full investigation. But despite their efforts, they never found the man or any sign of the attackers. About a month ago, I got a call informing me that the case had been officially closed, with no further developments. I never found out who the man I saved was, or what had gotten him into that situation. All I know is, you'll never catch me driving through that part of West Virginia again, even if it means driving around the entire country to avoid it.